just taking the wind speed here, make sure that it's safe.
Okay, so everybody's got bird bags. Kara and I have our blood kits, stopwatches for net bleeding. All right, it's 5:35, so it's time to start opening nets. All right, we ready?
Before European settlement, the Central Valley would have been a vast inland sea. It would have had meandering rivers that weren't contained by levees. It would have had wetlands with water spread out over vast acreages and just a great diversity of habitats.
There were no rice fields, there were no homes, there were no levees. It was marshland, it was grasslands. I imagine it being a beautiful, beautiful sight with clouds of birds each and every winter.
So 4 million acres of wetland, riparian forests, a very complex setting, a lot of structure, teeming with wildlife, hundreds of millions of birds utilizing it on an annual basis.
After the gold rush, after people started moving into this part of California, we started developing farms, we started developing cities, we developed levees and channelized our rivers. When the levees went in, the floodplain stopped being flooded regularly each and every year.
California has lost 95% of its wetlands in the best of times. And so the wettest of years, we only have 5% of what we had historically, yet we're still trying to support and maintain the Pacific Flyway, tens of millions of birds that are moving through us each year.
Today we are recreating that habitat largely on flooded rice fields in winter. The flooded rice fields provide enormous resources to shorebirds, to waterfowl, to geese.
For many landowners, there's many ways that they can do small changes and not affect their bottom line and have greater benefits to the ecosystem.
Many parts of the country you rotate crops. We don't do that here. We plant rice and then we plant birds. And that happens continually year after year after year.
Rice fields are such amazing habitat. I was always raised with this idea that we're actually working with the wildlife in the fields. And so we're always looking for ways to improve it. Not only productivity to produce more food, but what an amazing thing when you can also have a positive benefit on wildlife.
I think we might have got to burn the net. And both of its wings are really tangled in there, so you got to be extra careful with the wings, of course. Got him.
As soon as a bird flies into the net, we start our stopwatches. We need to get out there and get a blood sample within 1 minute in order to assess the stress level that the bird has.
No.
So there's still a Dunlin and a Dowitcher in there?
Yeah, that's cool.
Haven't had anything.
One of the things that we do when we capture the birds is to part their feathers and look for fat. You can see it when you look at their skin because the skin's pretty translucent. And if there's fat there, it's kind of yellow as opposed to that sort of deep purple of the muscle. And that gives us a sense for how stressed the birds are. Do they have reserves that they might need to survive some period of time when they can't get enough food?
Yeah, I don't really see any fat on this one. So like now we're seeing very little fat, but before they migrate, they could like literally cover their whole body in yellowish fat. Climate change is changing when habitat is available and where habitat is available, and birds have not adapted to these changes, meaning that there's a mismatch between when resources are available and when the birds need them most.
Some of these birds fly hundreds, even over 1,000 miles in their migratory journeys nonstop, and so they're not able to replenish their reserves. The likelihood that they're going to make it to their endpoint in migration is reduced. Their body condition might be compromised. So if we can better provide for those rest stops of the birds, they'll be in better shape as they enter the breeding period.
Our environment is definitely changing, and our species that rely on a healthy natural world are at risk. We need to do everything we can to protect the spaces that we have.
So you may ask, why should I care about bird populations? Well, healthy bird populations are an indicator of a healthy ecosystem. And a healthy ecosystem is good for not only birds, but also the people and communities in the Central Valley.
Preserving habitat is critically important, not only from a biodiversity perspective and the preservation of species for future generations to enjoy. It really has a direct impact on your health. The water that you drink, the fish that you eat, the meat that you eat, the vegetables that you eat, it's all connected. So we need to be mindful of policy decisions that could impact those factors.
Got it.
To understand how these birds are actually responding to changes in their surrounding environment, that requires actually having them in hand and capturing them, which is certainly a challenge.
We really need to be proactive, and we really need to put the best science forward so that we can understand what they can deal with and what they can't.
We've found that we can even hold that water longer than we used to. We used to drain our fields March 1 of every year. We've worked with some of our partners for some shorebird habitat, and we take it even longer into March.
The joint venture has provided a framework so that when programs are put in place that we as farmers participate in, that we know that those programs are fitting under the long-term goals of the joint venture.
The Central Valley Joint Venture is a public-private partnership of 20 state and federal agencies, conservation organizations, and one corporation that work collaboratively to protect, restore, and enhance habitat for birds in the Central Valley.
The joint venture really provides this social connectivity and the glue that's necessary for conservation at this type of scale.
The joint venture provides metrics. It's a feedback mechanism, right? Are we doing enough for a certain type of wildlife, or are those resources better utilized in different locations?
So we're looking at the movement of these birds. And to do that, we outfit them with a radio transmitter, which is just this tiny little device.
Yeah, the solar panel there to where it will still catch light, and it will only emit a signal when there's light hitting the solar panel, so there's no battery in this. They call them a life tag, to where in theory then it can last the life of the bird.
That emits a signal, which then is picked up by these towers.
It's entitled the Motus Network, which is Latin for movement. It allows us to essentially track them automated 24 hours a day. We're really interested in how long do they stay? Does that change based on the different conditions on the landscape and the different wetland conditions?
The purpose of this project is to better understand the impacts of drought on migratory shorebirds, both in terms of their movements around the Central Valley and their physiological condition.
We might find out that one area within the valley is a lot more important than we thought, and then some conservation dollars we might want to focus better within that basin than another.
Programs like this that provide a scientific framework are really valuable because when you want to make an impact, it's nice to know that you've got the science behind it.
The Central Valley Joint Venture is a model for bird conservation by bringing together policymakers, landowners, and scientists, all collaborating to support healthy and resilient bird populations.
We have this collaboration so that we can determine ultimately what the birds need. We can work with the farmers to see if it's possible, and then we can get the support, through policy folks that have influence in the agencies and how they allocate their funds.
I'm a big believer in collaboration and finding solutions. And I think we shouldn't shy away from solving big problems. The joint venture is a great example of that.
The reason organizations want to be part of the joint venture is because it is such an effective model and it's sort of where things are happening. And so bringing more folks to the table means we're going to have more projects that deliver multiple benefits for different needs. And that's the most effective way to achieve conservation.
By continuing to work in strong partnerships, we can secure healthy bird populations for many generations to come.